okay? Not likely having a picnic. And instead of sitting on chairs or benches, they're each sitting on their own respective nuclear warhead missiles. They appear to be enthralled in an arm wrestling match, and with their non-arm wrestling hand, their fingers are respectively trembling on buttons that we can only assume will trigger and launch nuclear missiles. For you Cold War buffs, this might be an excellent tattoo to envision in your future. Any essential questions here do you feel really connect to this one? There's a lot going on here. Yeah.
What challenges are as cultures interacting?
Okay, why?
Nuclear war.
So these are two different cultures. Challenging nuclear war could be easily defined as challenging. Okay, Isaac Nathan, speak up for me.
What's a healthy society not look like?
What does a healthy society not look like? Okay, there's a lot of flipping that question. Why?
Because, well, again, there's two nuclear warheads and they're about to push each other, so it's not really a healthy society.
Awesome. Love it, love it. Isaac Gressel.
Oh, I was just going to mention that the wire from the button that could presumably JFK
Is connect.
missile on it.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
I just
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's like sort of he's going to force them to do it themselves. Eamon.
What opportunities are action cultures around?
Okay. How so? What opportunities do you see arising from this little nuclear picnic?
Although they are having a nuclear picnic, and that's not necessarily a great thing.
Yeah.
They are, there's an opportunity arising here from what they're doing because they're going to try to stop themselves from blowing each other up.
Okay.
And so that's an opportunity for them.
Good call. Opportunity to not blow one another up. Okay. Anything else? You, sir.
I think it's,
Can't quite hear you.
I think for this, it's also like the, what challenges arise from cultures interacting.
Okay.
So, I think it's just because I do think it's a challenge. And it also is kind of like, what does a healthy society look like? Because, in the Cold War, like, when the US and Soviets would interact, there was always this nuclear tension. And, you know, it's like, is that really a good thing that whenever these two countries even go close to each other, they're like, oh, we're going to destroy the world now?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Mutual assured destruction. Math. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Any other thoughts on this? When I say mutually assured destruction, his eyes light up. All right. Excellent. Let's have a hand for our sign holders. And come on. And let's return. What I'm going to ask you guys to do is keep those journals open, and I'm going to pass out these Eisenhower declassified this document, and we're going to take a look at what Eisenhower responded to with Sputnik, and if we would have changed it a little bit. So let's head back. Here. Guys, what I'm doing is I'm passing out Eisenhower's document here. It's called a memorandum, which is essentially just sort of a fancy word for a letter and meeting notes. The first page is a little bit small, and the second page is a little bit bigger. The reason I made these pages kind of small is so you can write around them on your journal page. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do at your tables before we start reading this in a detailed way is to simply source this document. And by that, well, what do I mean? What do I mean by sourcing the document before you even read it?
Figure out who it's written by.
Okay, so one, you're going to figure out who it's written by. What's another thing you might need to do to source it? Okay?
Maybe get like the date.
Yeah, when it was written. Okay, cool. And that should be about it. And then Gus, you said what? About
Primary and secondary.
yeah. So determine whether it's a primary or secondary document. So work with the guys at your tables right now, and let's get author if we can, the date in which it was written, and whether or not you think it's a primary or secondary document, and then we'll get into it from there. So work with each other on that right now. And I'll pass the blue sticks around.
October 9th.
17.
Yeah,
October 9th.
this is for you guys.
October 8th.
This is for you.
Where's our first?
This is for you guys. So we're looking for author if there is one, we're looking for date, and we're looking for primary or secondary.
It's primary.
The night of conference with the president, October 8th, 1957.
Yeah, this is October 9th, 1957. Yes. The conference with the president was on October 8th.
Yeah, it was written on
So I think this is primary wise. And
primary, so
it's, the author is E.J. Goodman.
Paster.
Good pacer.
I'm a good paster. I'm a good paster.
I like
It says so.
Looking for author, date, and if it's possible, primary or secondary. Oh yeah, what's minutes? That's an interesting thing. Good call. No.
it's what it's called when you record what's going on in your year.
Yeah.
It's Irish citizen conversation, and it's a meeting. Exactly. Yes, you know what's next.
Look, if you have red light. Yep. Yep. First one's a little. Okay. Okay. So I just want to start. I want to start by sourcing this and identifying before we even read anything the author, if there is one, the date, if there is one, and if we can use any of that information to provide whether it's a primary or secondary document. So by sourcing, is there an author or authors, person or group in this? Henry, what do you got?
E.J. Goodpaster.
Okay, so we got AJ Goodpaster. How do we know someone else that this guy is the author of the document? I mean, what are we specifically looking at that tells us that this guy wrote the document? Gus.
He signed after he wrote it.
He signed it at the bottom of it. Okay. So do we feel pretty good about that? Can we trust that?
Yeah.
All right. So what do we know about this guy AJ Goodpaster, other than the fact that he's got a really sweet last name?
He's good pastor.
So he may be a good pastor, but that's just his last name. He may not be. But what else do we know about this guy? Yeah. Okay, Brigadier General in the United States Army. So he's a pretty high-ranking official. Is that pretty high-ranking, Brigadier General?
It's right under colonel and then above colonel it's like.
Above colonel, it's general.
Okay. Okay, so he's pretty high up. Okay, so he's the author. We know that. Did anybody anybody able to catch a date as to when it was written? Isaac Nathan?
October 9th, 1957.
October 9th, 1957. If you look back on yesterday's notes, it's pretty darn close to Sputnik being launched, right? What date was Sputnik launched?
October 4th.
October 4th. So this is just 5 days later. Okay, so this is October 9th, 1957. So written by a general in the Army, a brigadier general, by the way. Does it make it primary or secondary if the space race is our context? Yeah. It is primary, okay? And how can we tell that? By a guy who was directly involved. Okay, awesome, awesome, fantastic. So what I want to do, you guys, is I want to go through this kind of line by line and read through it and make sure that we sort of understand sort of how Eisenhower decided to respond to this. So can I just get someone to take the first paragraph nice and loud and clear? And before you do that, if you wouldn't mind just reading the first line at the top that sort of gives the title memorandum. Gus, why don't you read that for those first two lines?
Memorandum of Conference with the President, October 8th, 1957, 8:30 a.m.
Okay, so there's a little difference in the dates here. How do we explain the fact that the top of the paper says October 9th, and then the next line it says Memorandum of a Conference, October 8th, 57, 8:30 a.m. What's up, Nate?
It would probably be the time that this conference happened, and then the time that this was set.
Gotcha, gotcha. So like good pastor, was there on the 8th at 8:30 a.m. and then maybe what you're saying is that he prepared the report the next day?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, okay. And we've got a bunch of other people present. Isaac Russell, will you take the first paragraph for me?
Yeah, Secretary Corals?
Corals, good.
Is that like a name?
That's a name, yeah.
By reviewing a
Memorandum.
memorandum prepared in defense from the President on the subject of the Earth satellite dated October 7th, 1957.
Okay.
He left a copy with the President. He reported that the Soviet launching on October 4th had apparently been highly successful.
Okay, so the President has been informed not only that Sputnik was launched, but what about Sputnik? That it was highly successful. That may be worth underlining and noting on your document. That not only was Sputnik launched, but that it was a super successful launch. Yeah.
Say apparently.
That apparently it had been highly successful. So they've just heard that it's been successful. They're not in the Soviet, they're not in the Soviet intel. So it's been highly successful. Somebody want to take the next few lines. The President. Why don't you go ahead, guys, and then we'll come back.
The President asked Secretary Quarles about the report that had come to his attention to the effect that Redstone could have been used and have placed a satellite in orbit many months ago. Secretary Quarles said that there was no doubt that the Redstone had been used. Let's read that. No doubt that the Redstone had been used.
Had it been used.
Had it been used, could have orbited a satellite a year more ago.
Okay, there's a disagreement amongst this group of people at this conference. Chat with the guys at your table right now, and just from those lines that Gus read, try to pull out what was the disagreement amongst the guys at this meeting. Go ahead.
Maybe about satellite or spaceships. And Redstone's probably an name.
Or a satellite. But it definitely is. So what's the disagreement? What's the disagreement or the conflict between the guys at this meeting? They're in a conflict with one another. Isaac.
Something about a Redstone satellite that could have been launched, like a satellite named Redstone.
Okay, cool. Yeah. When the satellite was launched, okay. What do we think Redstone actually is? Yeah.
I think it's a carrier for a satellite that could have been launched.
So you think it's a U.S. carrier for a satellite that maybe could have been launched, but they didn't launch it? Okay. All right. Cool. So, do you want to say something? No. Okay. So we're at Secretary Corals, the Science Advisory Committee. Could someone pick up there? Maybe Evan. Could you pick up that the Science Advisory Committee had felt?
The Science Advisory Committee had felt, however, that it was development.
Well, that it was better.
That it was better to have the Earth satellite proceed separately from military development.
Okay.
One reason was to stress the peaceful character of the effort, and second was to avoid the inclusion of material to which foreign scientists might be given access. which is used in our own military rockets.
Keep going.
He said that the Army feels that it could erect a satellite 4 months from now if given the order.